I'm really delighted to welcome our speakers for today's session. So they're going to be doing a joint presentation. As ever, the format with this is that we will come to questions at the end. So please feel free to use the chat function as we go through. I am going to say, if you have a very technical question, just so that everyone else doesn't kind of get bogged down in anything that might be too technical, Temple has said we will email him with any very technical questions, and we can pick up with anything that's very specific, perhaps offline, and we'll keep the questions today to being quite general. But do post anything you want to ask us, even if that's us picking up in email afterwards and making those introductions, we'll do it. And as ever, the session is recorded, so if you're a bit like me and this is so new that you'd need to go back and refresh yourself, the recording will be available, and we will also sort out sending slides to you. So you haven't come to hear me, so I'm going to hand over straight away now to David, who's going to kick off and start today's presentation. Thank you, David.
Yes, good morning. Thanks, Naomi. I'm very excited about today's presentation, and I'm excited even more so about the opportunity to work with Social Enterprise Scotland on a number of levels, particularly obviously on the digital currency side. The short presentation is I'll just give you the format. I'll just get that up. It's as follows: why digital currency? Just a quick background. What's in it for you, which is the kind of meat of the conversation today. And then I'll hand over to Temple, who's the CEO of Scotcoin. We were going to have Lindsay Leroy from the Scottish Design Exchange, but she couldn't make it today. She's just had a last minute crisis. It's okay, it's a good one. But we do have the able-bodied Jonathon Richards in her stead, and Jonathon will be covering for her, and then we'll tell you how to sign up for Scotcoin, get your own wallet, and come on board. And then we'll be taking questions thereafter. So that's the brief format. So why digital and why Scot? Now, indeed, as Naomi was saying, it is quite a complex issue when it comes to the actual technicalities. But heck, we're using Zoom today. It's pretty technical, but we're not having to worry too much about it. So I would stress less about the actual mechanics of cryptocurrencies and digital currencies. You can find out about that, and certainly we're part of our extended remit is to advise and educate on the whole crypto world. But right now, it's just looking at it as a currency for helping the third sector in particular. So what's good about Scotcoin as opposed to other cryptocurrencies? Well, it's Scottish for a start. We've got a great brand in Scotland. It travels very, very well. It travels extremely well internationally, obviously. And indeed, I've been speaking to a couple of organisations in the US who obviously have links with Scotland in terms of donations in the third sector. And I think that's quite exciting, because they're really getting sexed up about the notion that they can actually pay for things in Scotcoin as opposed to dollars, because they lose an awful lot of value. And indeed, you guys in the third sector, you lose a lot of value from donors coming across from other currencies. So they're really getting excited about the fact that we can actually use Scotcoin as a currency, and they can directly put that Scotcoin into your wallets. And it's a great time for Scotland to be leading this kind of thing. I mean, not only have we got the COP this week, we are innovators. We have always been innovators, and indeed, it's a perfect storm just now, politically, socially, economically, and all sorts of ways for Scotland to be leading the way and showing how the third sector, how the people at the bottom of the pyramid, so to speak, could be helped by something such as crypto. And it's a super additional way anyway for the third sector to receive donations. And what sticks out for Scotcoin is from the outset, it's run by the Scotcoin Project CIC. It's a community interest company in its own right. So we have a number of things that we have to do to conform to that. And we're very much behind the notion that this is all about democratization. It's about helping those who are most in need in society. And indeed, there's the wider thing about cryptocurrencies is that it's democratizing it, and it leads to less value extraction from commerce. So we don't have the PayPals, the banks that are standing in the way of the extraction, the transactions and exchange of value between people in the third sector. And it's digital and disruptive. It's timely. It's the thing. I think everybody, including governments, are now coming round to realise that cryptocurrency is here to stay. I know Norway are taking it on board. We've had El Salvador has jumped ahead of everybody seemingly, and we're having other nations in Estonia and others will be very quick to follow, because Estonia in particular are pretty digital savvy. So it's timely and it empowers the citizen. It helps the citizen. It means that they can actually get money in their wallets without having even a bank account. So it's really good in empowering the citizen, and it's inclusive and safe because anybody can have a wallet. And leverages Scott in injection in many different ways, because we as a CIC are donating, we're delivering. We are looking to put money into projects, into specific projects, to reward people and to reward and to help joint ventures in the third sector that may not have come about because of lack of funds or whatever. And indeed, you could look at it, and this is what's really been exciting for the conversations I've had with you and your colleagues, is that the actual inter-third sector transactions can be covered and lubricated by Scotcoin. So not just helping those in need, the citizen that we all aspire to help, the inter-third section transactions can be lubricated and notarized by Scott, which means that you've got an actual value exchange within the third sector in Scotland, and we're working on a couple of plans to help that process. And so it also pulls in SMEs as well, some purpose-driven, purpose-led, mission-led SMEs as well. It can pull them into the mix as well and make everybody just a little bit more socially savvy in terms of their corporate social responsibility. So, cutting to the chase, what's in it for you guys? Now, as you'll see here, this is the currency flywheel. This will be available to you. It's finished format sometime soon, but effectively this shows the exchange within what we could call a virtuous value ecosystem. Now, as a marketer, we always come up with these wonderful terms, virtuous value exchange ecosystem. Wow. But in effect, that means that we all together can use Scotcoin in a virtuous way, and it helps to get out the coin, to get out into the hands of and the wallets of the population, back into the social enterprises in a very virtuous fashion. And that means that it's giving money in the pockets of the citizen. In turn, it goes into the income and the cash registers for the virtual cash registers, if you like, for the social enterprise or the third sector organisation. They can then in turn spend it on a number of things, including their own purchases, their volunteers even. They can reward volunteers carefully, and also they can reward those that are coming through the door as well, so that entices people to come through. For instance, if they went through a course on say orienteering run by the Outward Bound Trust, then they could go through that, and not only did they get a certificate and improvement in life choices and all the rest of it, and really enjoy their experience, they also get a reward at the end of it. So it's very virtuous, and it means at the end of the day that money goes out and ultimately helps people improve their life. So it's an extremely virtuous exchange of value. And without going into the detail again, there is a couple of levels for crypto. There's the main level, the first level, if you like, but the second level we've developed is the Scott wallet itself. And that means that there's a frictionless exchange between those who have Scott wallets. And without going into the technical details, they're all online anyway, and indeed Temple might wish to add to that. But it effectively means that if somebody has a Scott wallet and is paying money into your third sector, either as a citizen who's buying something, or it's a donor who's donating some Scott, all they do is go from one wallet to the other, and it does that in seconds and at no cost. And that is a really extremely good innovation for us, because it means that we're not only just relying on the blockchain and the top level, but we actually have the Scott wallet, which means that there's this frictionless transaction between citizen and third sector organisation, and also organisation to organisation. And I like this because it means that you can account for it easier. You can obviously transfer money easily in terms of Scott, and it means that everybody can do it pretty quickly, and you're not having to stand there waiting for a cup of coffee whilst a transaction goes through. So that's my overall brief, and I'd like to hand over to Temple, who's the lead and CEO of the organisation. He's the CEO of the Scotcoin project CIC, and also obviously, as the graphic shows, he's the author of Blockchain, Bitcoin and You, the new publication that's been recently made into a hard copy and available to all. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Temple.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for allowing us all to come along and talk to you about Scotcoin. I think David actually has covered most of the things that are relevant in terms of third sector involvement. I'm going to start just by giving you a very brief idea of what we can do, and it may be relevant from your own point of view or not. But quite recently, we were able to buy some clothes that were going to be incinerated, and we paid for them in Scotcoin. Now, the people who took the Scotcoin, the point that is relevant here is that either they were going to spend money to incinerate, which isn't good from any point of view, but they got some Scotcoin instead. Now, the Scotcoin they've got, they can then use within their own ecosystem. They can reward buyers, they can do all sorts of things, or they can save it, or they can eventually change it on an exchange. What we did with the clothes was we brought them up to Emmaus in Glasgow, and Emmaus gave them to lots of people. And that, to me, is a win-win from all sorts of angles. The point is, not only did the people who sold them to us not cost money, they actually got something in exchange. And that works everywhere. If you for example, if you want to give a 20% discount on something, if it's £100 you're selling for, and you drop the price to 80, well, you've lost 20 quid. But if you take Scotcoin in exchange for that 20 quid, you at least have something which you can subsequently sell or use in some other manner. I think that is the most important thing about Scotcoin, is that it can be used in other areas. There is, I'm going to give you a bit of history because I think it's relevant. Back in the 1930s, there was no money anywhere. There was no liquidity. The banks wouldn't give anybody any money, and most of the banks were going bust anyway. And in Switzerland, the good citizens of Zurich and areas round about it set up a system called WIR, W-I-R. And I'm always accused of banging on about WIR. And the reason is very simple. It's because it is a cryptocurrency. It's not a digital currency. It's a cryptocurrency, and it exists to this day. So it's been around for, practically speaking, 90 odd years. And what they did there was they exchanged goods for WIR. It's called a WIR franc. And they were able to continue to operate where they possibly would not have been able to operate had they not had it. Now, WIR has continued to grow through the years. WIR currently has something like 70,000 businesses that use it. It has 600,000 or 700,000 people who use it, and it turns over about 6 or 7 billion euros a year. Now, that is a significant sum of money, and it's really good. And the great thing about WIR is, and I'm always saying this as well about crypto, crypto is not exclusive as fiat is not exclusive. So, if people sort of say, is fiat going to go out of fashion? The answer is it's never going to go out of fashion. Crypto is complementary to it. Now, in Switzerland, you can go into a shop and want to buy a sofa, and the man says, well, that's 1,000 Swiss francs. And you say, well, that's lovely, I'll have that. I've only got 700 Swiss francs, but I've got 300 WIR. And the man in the shop will say, yeah, that's fine. And he sends you off the sofa. He will then use that WIR to his suppliers or to his workers or whatever it might be. And the whole system is a virtual circle, and it's really very, very, very works very well. And people find it really useful. It's a significant increase in the amount of business that's done in Switzerland over a year. And one of our hopes is that in the future, then Scotcoin will be able to do the same within Scotland and increase good things for everybody in Scotland. So what are the unique attributes of crypto? Well, David touched on it briefly about its transfer of value. I believe, because I've never done it, but I believe that if you want to send £1 million to Africa or South America or Australia or anywhere, you can pay between 20 and 30,000 pounds of a transfer fee. And certainly if you tried to do it with PayPal, it would cost you at least that. The point about crypto is that you can do that same £1 million equivalent transfer for, pennies, literally. Maybe, I mean, they've gone up a bit recently, the fees, but sort of between $1 and $10, let's just say. And that is a huge, huge saving and is something that is well worth doing. So much so that, in fact, the Philippines are still talking about setting up a Bitcoin exchange within the Philippines, using the government doing it themselves. And the idea would actually be that you would be able to send money from the Filipinos who work all around the world. They send it back to the Philippines, to whoever it might be. And that is going to save the Philippine economy something like $1.5 billion a year. And that's very worthwhile saving, no doubt about that at all. So that's a good thing. The other thing you can do with crypto is you can target it. So again, making it up, supposing you want to send money to a charity that's doing water wells in Africa or whatever it might be, you can actually send that to the people who are doing the digging of the wells. So there's nobody taking a cut out of it. There's no government, there's no middleman, there's no bank, there's nobody doing that. So if you send them £100 in Scotcoin or crypto, they will receive £100 in Scotcoin or crypto. And that again is a very, very useful and good attribute. I think the point about the TSP-CIC, I think I should explain that there's two parts here. One is, in fact, Scotcoin itself. Now, Scotcoin is a digital currency, and that is, the same kind of thing as Bitcoin and Ethereum and any of the other ones you may have heard of. And then we have the Scotcoin project CIC. Scotcoin project CIC is the educational and, if you like, operational arm of Scotcoin. And our job is to promote the fact of cryptocurrencies, of Scotcoin, and to work with charities and help charities in what they are doing. We have lots of ways we can do that, and I'm sure you've got many more that you would like us to help with, and we'd be very happy to talk to you about that. That's no problem at all. The other thing about it is that we find very much so that the Scott Wallet has been a great help to lots of people involved with crypto. The problem with crypto is, for example, if you're using Bitcoin, you've got at least a 10-minute wait, and usually much more than that. You have high fees. With Ethereum, the wait's not quite so bad, but you still have quite high fees. What we have done with Scott Wallet is we've created a system whereby you can transfer from Mr. A to Mr. B, and there is no charge. There is absolutely no fee. And it's also instantaneous. I mean, I know David said within a few seconds. It is in fact instantaneous. Or I can't tell you how quick it is, but if you get some, you can try it and you'll see for yourselves. The real point about that is that there is therefore a very much easier way of dealing with transfers of value. And this, I think, is the important point about all cryptos. Their real value or their real worth is in transfer of value. And we at Scotcoin are very much involved in that. That's very much what we do. I think I don't really need to say very much more than that at the moment. Anyone who, I see there's two Q&As there. I'm just going to see what they are. What is Scotcoin value tied to? No, it's not a fiat currency. It's not linked to the performance of anything. It is not linked to a commodity. Its value is linked to the fact that people use it and people accept it as value. And that is the same as pounds, shillings and pence, which of course don't have any. I shouldn't say pounds, shillings and pence. I'm very old, as you can probably see. Nowadays that has no real backing either, apart from the fact that the government says that they'll pay £1 if you ask for it. The short answer is what people will use it for. We're finding that people are willing to pay around £50 per thousand, so that's 5 pence per token. And then the second question from Paul Haney again is, when we say safe in terms of Scotcoin's value exchange, do we mean technologically safe, i.e. crypto secure, or economically safe, i.e. non-volatile, or both? The short answer is we mean both. In terms of value exchange and technologically safe, Scotcoin has in fact been verified by Etherscan, who are the gatekeepers for really the vast majority of cryptos, and we've also been code audited, which means the underlying codes, by a company called Hacken. Hacken are the leading code auditors worldwide, and we have the highest rating, so we're quite pleased about that. And then we've got Kay asking as well about volatility and so on. We are, as we speak, not on an exchange. Now, we will be going on to an exchange, but we believe that the growth in what we're doing and so on will make us not so susceptible to volatility. It should be remembered that there is volatility in all value anywhere. Fiat money, of course, is different, although if you happen to be involved in the currency markets, you can find that the exchanges move quite dramatically sometimes. But we are working on ways, in fact, to decrease any kind of volatility. We have what are called currency. What they do is they make sure that the currency only moves a certain amount. Liquidity providers, they're called, and we have engaged some of them. And when we go on the exchange, we will be having that in place. Having said that, of course, I repeat, it's entirely what people are prepared to pay on. We know roughly what the value is going to be on day one. It's like shares going onto the stock exchange. They know what the opening price is going to be. They have no idea what the price will be in a week's time or a year's time. And I think that's true most places. So I think I'll just leave it at that, unless anybody's got any other questions just now.
Well, we could leave. I think we'll probably leave them to the end, if that's okay.
Okay, all right, that's fine. No, it's fine. Just those two are there.
It's just a crack on in case people need to leave as well.
I've got somebody saying I'm having problems signing in. That's not me. I don't know where that is, but anyway, okay, that's fine. Right, David, so back to you.
Okay, no problem. So I'll hand over to Jonathon, and just for those of you who have maybe just joined a little bit later, it was going to be Lindsay Leroy, but she's been detained, and Lindsay's effectively the chief exec of the Scottish Design Exchange, and we have 3 slides which Lindsay was going to explain to us, but I'm handing over to Jonathon now, and I'll just move them forward for you, Jonathon, if that's okay. And it's problem, solution, result is effectively the 3 slides, just to give you a bit of background as to how Scott's being used at the Scottish Design Exchange.
Of course. So good morning, everybody. As Temple and David said, thank you very much for your time. It's hugely appreciated. It's an important commodity. Fairly obviously, I am definitely not Lindsay Leroy. I'm probably about as far away as it's possible to be from Lindsay Leroy. Before I just get into what we do with the Scottish Design Exchange, I'm hoping it might be helpful just to share a personal account of how I got engaged with Scotcoin, because Temple and David are long-term in this. I'm relatively new, and I got involved with it because I am excited specifically about the good the currency can do, because that's what makes this currency different from all the others. It has a function, it has a role, it can change things, it is a fuel. So that's actually why I'm here, and that is actually why I'm masquerading as Lindsay Leroy right now. The crypto market itself, in case you weren't aware, is globally $2.3 trillion, and around $1 billion of crypto are traded every day on the planet. So this is a huge, huge phenomenon. It's not going anywhere. It is only going to get stronger. And our ambitions for Scotcoin, it's very, very simple. The more people, the more organizations we engage with Scotcoin, the more powerful it becomes. The more powerful it becomes, the more good it can do. And that it really is as simple as that. So that's our starting point. I'll just come to SDX now and Lindsay. We've known Lindsay for quite a while. She's very special in her space. She is a really, really inspired businesswoman who basically found a problem in the landscape for artists and designers in Scotland, and that they didn't have a proper platform, and they now have a proper platform with her under the Scottish Design banner. So there are two outlets. There's one in Glasgow, Buchanan Galleries, which I'm sure all of you will know. It's a huge shopping area, massive footfall. So they're there. And they're also in George Street in Edinburgh. So these are our two major cities in Scotland, and the Scottish Design Exchange is there in both. You can see the success is that they've generated over £3 million in sales, and they support 320 artists. And in fact, I know that's growing on a daily basis because that's the way it works. Scotcoin itself actually at this point sponsors a couple of artists. There's one in Glasgow and one in Edinburgh, which is, when we started talking with her, we wanted to explore how we could contribute to their ecosystem at any level. So the most obvious one is they will be taking Scotcoin as a currency from January 22. Right now, we contribute Scotcoin by sponsoring artists within their space. So as I say, we sponsor those two people. We buy their space, and if they have that on a monthly basis, and we try and facilitate their sales. And it basically, it's a system by which it's just another way that we can kind of feed into an organization and help. So, perhaps when you're thinking about Scotcoin, it has a lot of platforms, it has a lot of flexibility in it. And as a culture, Scotcoin and the people involved in it are very open to exploring. We don't do conversations that end not interested in that. We will actually genuinely engage and try and find a way through. So just moving on, I think that might be to the next slide. So this is a promotion that we did a little bit earlier in the year. I think this was August. And we had this at the outlets in Glasgow and Edinburgh. And please do admire the lovely balloons and the lovely posters. Crucial point is, in both outlets, and this was tying in with an SDX birthday, in both outlets, we had really, really good footfall, really, really good engagement with people who signed up for Scott Wallets. And that's the start of our formalized relationship with SDX. It all starts there, really comfortable. If you can imagine this rolled out over multiple organizations, we can do this. I'd like to go back to Temple's example of the Emmaus clothing case study, because again, I'd look at that and if you're sitting watching this and think, that could be 100, that could be 1,000, that could be 10,000. All these aggregate exchanges and trades and engagements we can make that can actually fuel change and make things better for people. And that's what we're about. And that's actually why all of us on this call this morning really, really excited about the opportunity just to share with you and talk to you about what we do. So that really, I think, gives hopefully an overview of what we do and what we've done with SDX, and how we are very, very open to doing lots of new stuff with lots of new parties.
Great, thanks, Jonathan. Yeah, you just reminded us that not only is the technology new, but the application of what we're doing in terms of Scotcoin and its use within the third sector. We're all just discovering this, and indeed, that conversation with North America about the donors and their value disturbance or extraction, you could call it, before it gets to those in need and the worthy causes in Scotland, and the notion that we can do business within the third sector and it can be smooth with Scotcoin. All these things are new ideas. And as you've said, Jonathan, we're very, very keen to talk to individual third sector organisations and SCS as a whole to see how we can move this along. And the other thing which I've been reminded there, and one of those bullet points in the last slide there, is that it's a competitive advantage as well. And I know that certainly some commercial things regards organisations being more commercial. It's a difficult thing to discover, but sometimes that competitive difference is something that we all want and we all need. And let's face it, it's busy out there, and we've got to get the eyeballs and the wallets of everybody, and we want to have a wee advantage. And having Scotcoin is a certain advantage. Sorry, Temple, you've got your hand up there.
Yeah, no, the only reason I've got my hand up is because that there's two recent things that have happened, which I think are quite relevant. The first is we have an agreement with people called Better Internet Search, that's BIS, who again are Scottish, again are a CIC, and are extremely, as far as I'm concerned, extremely good from the point of view that if you look for something on their internet search system, you do not get dozens of emails asking you why haven't you bought whatever it was, and texts and ads and everything thrown at you, which I find very annoying. And they reward people for looking and doing stuff with them with Scotcoin. And the people are then able to, as I said before, use it, save it, spend it, whatever. But lots of people have in fact decided that instead of them taking it, because it's not huge sums, they basically award it to charities of their choice, and there's a range of charities that we and BIS support in within that system. That's the first one. The second one is a new one which is not yet fully with us, but we're just about there. We've made the initial steps, shall we say? People called BBX. BBX, and we will be announcing this fairly shortly. BBX are people who have their own internal token, and what they're going to do is they're going to take Scotcoin for their services. Now there's literally hundreds and hundreds of different services that they have people within their system operating. They have worldwide something like 300,000 plus members. They have more than 8,000, I believe. In fact, I believe the update is this month. In fact, they've just passed the 10,000 within the UK. So all that is really useful, and it's a very useful thing. If you have Scotcoin, you can then go to whoever it might be, someone to design you a new web or whatever it would be, a new website, and they will do it in exchange for Scotcoin. And that is a genuine use of something which is worthwhile. So that was all I was going to say, because I think it's relevant.
Well, it is absolutely relevant, and indeed you just reminded me that not only third sector organisations, but SMEs, for-purpose SMEs, have perhaps some excess capacity which they can use, and through BBX they can use it as a barter, because BBX is effectively a formalised barter system. And but using Scotcoin, obviously, that helps lubricate it in a number of ways, and yeah, that's very relevant. So, just to move on and summarise effectively, what's in it for the third sector, what's in it for the individual organisations in terms of Scotcoin, and well, in summary, it boosts donations and options. The case study, or at least the example given about the American donors is a good one, and it means that instead of having just dollars exchanged to pounds and then value extracted from that, they can actually do it direct. So it boosts donations and options for the third sector organisation, and obviously increases income, which we're all interested in, especially at this time. And you can do it and use it to pay for things. Apart from the normal things, you can actually do it in other ways. You can pay for for help from a fundraiser or some volunteers, within reason, obviously, because volunteers tend to be volunteers and not expect to be paid, but that doesn't mean to say that they couldn't get rewarded in some way. It lower transactions costs between the citizen who's using Scot and the third sector organisation. It reduces them to zero. And likewise, a third sector organisation to third sector organisation within the ecosystem, it's no cost. So you've basically got a wonderful system where all the value is kept within the ecosystem, and it's virtuous. And again, just to remind everybody, the whole thing is set up as a currency for good. It's not for personal gain, it's not for corporate gain, it's purely and simply, and it's not for dogma, it's purely and simply for good and to help our fellow citizens, which, let's face it, we're all in the business of doing. So before I move on to the general questions, if there's still some coming through the chat, I'll let Naomi have a look at that, and I'll just summarise what to do next. If you have a technical question, you can fire that to Temple, and Temple's address is there, temple@scotcoinproject.com. And if you'd like to continue the conversation with my good self about how your organisation can benefit, can receive donations, etc., of Scot, then please send it to davidhood@scotcoinproject.com. And indeed, the other thing to remind you, of course, is to go to Scot Wallet and set up your Scot wallets right now, because there's several hundred now come on board. The Scot Wallet itself was just made available a short time ago. The Android version is freely available now on the Google Play Store. The Apple iOS version, it's coming soon. It's coming within the next few weeks, I gather. But anyway, you can get onto scotwallet.com just now, and you can take your personal one out, whether it's David or Temple or Naomi or whatever. But you can also get, obviously, your organisation in some way or your brand to make it nice and easy for people to pay you in Scot. So that's all I'd like to say. And as I said, I'll hand back to Naomi to see if there's any questions for Temple.
Thank you very much. And I just saw in the chat that apparently it's gone live on the Apple Store today. So I just thought I'd point that out to people. So there's a little update. I'm probably going to, there are a couple of other questions come up in the Q&A, and I'm conscious, thank you to everyone that's asked questions so far, because this is such a new topic to me that actually you're much more able to ask articulate questions than I am on this topic. I think we're all still learning. So I just wanted to ask, someone's asked how secure is the Scot wallet? And I think they've referenced also in the chat that, that Binance, if I've said that right, is a secure wallet based app, but it can be vulnerable. So how does Scot wallet differ from that?
Well, I'm perhaps not the best person. Funnily enough, actually, Brian Mackay, who's actually on this, is our security guru, as it were. But basically, Scot wallet is on the Ethereum network. And Ethereum itself is a blockchain which is reckoned to be as safe as 1 grain of sand in the universe. Now that is pretty safe. So we are on that blockchain. All the transactions are stored on that blockchain and so on. So there's no issues there. You mentioned Binance. Now Binance, of course, is a single point. It's not a it's not a distributed ledger type as is Ethereum, and that is a bit more that, well, it is more vulnerable. It's simple as that. So we are quite different from that. We are totally separate from anything like that.
Thank you, that's helpful. And I can see that Brian's been answering various bits in the chat as well. So he's certainly on hand to have helped with some of the questions today. Someone's asking, can you add funds into your wallet?
Yes, you certainly can. There is a system to be gone through, and this is slightly a technical question. The Ethereum mainnet is what they call layer 1, and Scot wallet is what we call layer 2. And you can transfer funds, backwards and forwards as you wish. There is a cost to doing that. That's different from being within the Scot wallet ecosystem all the time. I think if someone wants to know exactly how it can be done, then they would be better to contact either myself or Brian, and we'll talk you through it. If you want to buy Scotcoin, which is another thing, then talk to me and I'll see what I can do for you. But the actual transfer between your main wallet, which would be a MetaMask or a Trust wallet or a Me wallet, and Scott wallet, there is a charge for that, which is payable by Ethereum gas, and that is how it works.
Great. And again, I can see that Brian's putting just a link in the chat saying you go onto scottwallet.com and there's a how it works link. So that will go through a lot of that detail, hopefully, with people. And I think he's just said there's a user guide. So there's lots of useful information out there, which frankly, certainly for people like me that are quite new to all of this, would be really helpful. Can I just ask, and I'm hoping this isn't a daft question to ask, but I'm sure if I'm thinking it, someone else might be. You talk about the ecosystem, and I guess I always think of currency and it's simple. You've got to have a way to have it in the sense that you've got paid or you've earned it or you've got money, and you've also got a way to spend it. Is that all very much within the ecosystem of whoever's signed up?
Yes. There are people who are coming to us every day and saying, we'd like to sign up and be part of the Scotcoin ecosystem, which is just shorthand for saying people who use it. And the numbers of people will grow. The numbers of people who are able to use it is growing and will grow. And it is entirely down to people how they want to use it. Somebody might say, well, I'll give you a good example. We have somebody called ASAP Builders. ASAP Builders are prepared to accept Scotcoin for the work they do for you. They accept Bitcoin, they accept Ethereum, they accept other cryptos, but they also accept Scotcoin. So that is somebody using it proactively, if you like. But there's lots of other ways it can be used. But that's what I would describe as a currency use, for lack of a better expression. But there's other ways to use it too.
No, that's helpful, because I guess as you were speaking, I was trying to think of that sense of, is it for tangible things or intangible things? And I guess the example you had just given me was actually something that is quite tangible rather than. So that was helpful, just as I was thinking through the question as well. So
you didn't know I was a mind reader, did you?
Well, obviously you were, but that was it's interesting that I think it's as the conversation goes, you suddenly think, I think I'm getting this now. So I'm hopeful my knowledge of all of this is certainly increasing as a result of today's webinar, because like I say, it's all very new to me, and I think there's a lot of us that are quite nervous about these new systems as well. And I sometimes wonder whether actually, sometimes even the fact that we use the word currency, does that put people off, or is that because it is exactly what it is? Does that make? I think we think of currency in a very particular way.
I think to a certain extent you're right, because we think of currency as being pounds, dollars, euros, and so on and so on, and we tend to think those are trustable. I would actually make a fairly important point here. I mean, if you go back about 18 months, there were X number of dollars in the world. Today there are X plus 55% dollars in the world. In other words, it increased more than 50% in the last 18 months. To a certain extent, the same applies to pounds. It certainly applies to euros. It applies everywhere worldwide. Now, what that means is that there is more money chasing fewer goods, and we've seen that. We've seen inflation's already raising its head. We're up to 3.5% here or something. They're over 5% in the States. The Eurozone, which traditionally has been very low, is over 2.5%, and so on. And that means that, as I always say, as Harold Wilson used to say, the pound in your pocket has not been affected. The answer is the pound in your pocket has been affected. And if you go out to the shops and you try and buy, I don't know, a Yorkie bar, the Yorkie bar is always the famous thing that people use, or a Mars bar. A, you'll find it's smaller. B, you'll find it's probably gone up in price. And that's what inflation does. It takes away from people. It doesn't take away from the companies, because they, of course, adjust and make it work for them. But it does take away from people. Now, the great thing about crypto is, and I'm going to use Bitcoin as an example because it's the one that most people have heard of. the great thing about crypto is that there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins. There will never be any more. Currently, there's about 18.5 million that have been issued, and they're going to continue to be issued on a decreasing scale for the next 100 years, roughly. But what that means is that if you've got one Bitcoin, you're always going to have one Bitcoin that is worth one Bitcoin. And people who deal, and I use deal advisedly, in crypto, don't think in terms of, oh, I've got a Bitcoin, it's worth £43,000 or whatever it is. They think in terms of, I have got a Bitcoin. And they buy things, and you can buy things. There's over 20,000 places worldwide you can buy things with Bitcoin, and use it very much as a currency. There's a chap called Joel Valenzuela who he doesn't even use Bitcoin. He uses a thing called Dash, and he's been using that for about 7 years. He hasn't got a bank account. He got rid of his bank accounts and everything else 7 years ago, and has used his cryptocurrency Dash ever since. So when you say, you know, currency is secure, it's only as secure as you want it to be. And if you're busy printing it all over the place, as we are at the moment and have been for a couple of years, it is going to go down. You know, I'm I suppose originally an economist, and we you know, that's one of the great things in economics is that too much money chasing too few goods leads to inflation, and that's what we've got at the moment. And hopefully we believe that in fact cryptocurrency will stop people losing value, and that's what you're doing if you're holding pounds. I mean, you know, even if they put the rate of interest up, I mean, it's currently sort of 0.1% or something in a bank account. They might put it up to, I suppose, 0.25, 0.25%. But if you've got inflation running at 4 or 5%, you're losing 3, 4, 5% of that value every year. And one of the things I really like is if you had an old penny in 1900. Now, an old penny, for those who don't know, is a half a p. To be able to buy the same things today, you would need nearly £2. And that's what inflation does. It takes away from people and obviously everybody else. I'm sorry, that's one of my rants, but there we go.
No, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think all the questions that we have around volatility are because it's new and we don't understand it, and I think straight away go to risk. And it's interesting, as you were speaking, I think back of the stories of, you know, when the Turkish lira, people were having to withdraw millions out the bank, and they almost had to I don't know what the proper term is, but rebase their kind of currency at a different level. So,
and if I can add to that, Naomi, as well, we've got to remember there's a lot of people who extract an awful lot of value from the existing fiat-based systems, and you know, there's going to be a lot of bad PR around. Which is contrived in the main, because there's a lot of people who are not going to get their gravy train that they've always had if crypto takes off and democratizes currencies around the world. So, and again, it's the terminologies as well. Crypto, even the word crypto is kind of cryptic. It sounds like a negative word. I mean, it's similar to virtual, because I remember I wasn't old colleague of mine saying virtual. You know, when we're talking about virtual working, he said virtual working. Does that mean you're nearly there or almost there? Or, you know, so it's terminologies, you know, language is important here. But this is going to become the norm. What we're talking about just now, and shrugging shoulders and, you know, working out first level, second level, all the technologies, that's just going to be a black box in a couple of years' time, you know. So we're innovators here, and I'm very, very glad to see that the third sector could actually champion it. And it won't be the first. I mean, the first sector will wake up to it at some point, but the third sector have got the most to gain out of that. And that's just what Temple's been articulating about this whole value extraction thing that's going on with fiat currencies and the way business is done. Whereas we've got a real opportunity in Scotland, especially since the world's cameras and all the rest of it, the chattering classes are looking at Scotland just now for the way forward. And I think we've got a very exciting project on our hands here.
No, thank you.
Naomi just was mentioning the lira, the Turkish lira there. I saw one of the things that I look at quite frequently is what is Bitcoin worth in other currencies? And if you go back to when Bitcoin last was at its highest, which was 2017, and it was around $20,000, it's now around $63,000, $4,000. So the Turkish lira bought X I don't know. I have no idea what it was, but it was X. So even if you paid the highest possible price for Bitcoin then, and the price of Bitcoin was only $20,000 today, you would still have 5 times more lira than you started with. So in other words, you more than have covered the inflationary cost in those last 3 years, which I think is a straightforward example of what it happened. The other thing, just David actually was touching on there, was about knowing about the the black box. And I always say this: I have no idea how a mobile phone works, but I can make a phone call, and that's going to be the same thing with crypto. It would be good to know a little bit about it, obviously, but you don't have to. And if you just do what the instructions say on the tin, then it'll work.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It was a comment, I guess, David was making about language, wasn't it? To me, it still all sounds quite sci-fi, but actually it's not. It's like, how do we translate because it's innovative and it's perhaps something more futuristic, it feels unreal to us somehow, but actually that's why it was useful having Jonathon on today's call, I think, to give us that sense of the real example in how it's been used. So I've got one last question that's just come in, unless anyone wants to post any just last questions in the chat, but someone's just asked, is there such a thing as Scotcoin mining?
The short answer is no. The way we have done it is that we have what's called pre-mined. So there are a set number of Scotcoin. There will never be any more. That's the first point. The second point is that we have reserved a 60% or thereby of what has been mined to be released slowly over the next 120 years. And you may wonder why I keep on about 100 years. It's really because Bitcoin did it. So we're doing the same thing. And that means there will only be a certain amount released every year, not that many. Maybe I can't even think what the figures are now, but it won't be huge numbers every year. So the answer is no, it's not mined. It has been pre-mined. They're all there. They're all available for everyone to see, and that's it.
Great, thank you. And I'm just picking up on one last question. Someone was actually just asking, they're having trouble watching bits of this today and they just want to know about where the video will get shared. It's actually on the Social Enterprise Scotland Vimeo channel. So we tend to promote it in our social media. So if you follow us, you'll get all the links and connections there. So hopefully that helps. So I'm just checking if there's any last questions that have come in.
Could I just make one point that I think might be interesting for everybody watching? There are, as I'm sure everybody knows, barriers to even having a bank account in this country. Not everyone has a bank account. In fact, there's hundreds of thousands of people who don't. Scotcoin gets over that. Everybody can have Scotcoin. And I think that's an important point, because people are marginalized by the banking system and can be incorporated and included in Scotcoin system.
Yeah, I think just throwing in a little bit about El Salvador and Bitcoin. The interesting thing about them is that it took them however long it's taken them to get to 1.8 million bank accounts, and within 3 months they had over 3 million. They had over 3 million Bitcoin accounts. So that instantly gave some power to people who had nothing before, which I really like.
Absolutely.
Great. I'm just, here we go. Duncan's posted the chat of where you can find the webinar, so thank you. And I think someone's put a very particular proposal just in the chat, and an email. So I think if there's anything to pick up on that, I'd say, I think it's Andrew who sent a message to everyone. I'll leave the chat open for a little bit, just a couple of minutes, just once we close today's webinar. So if you want to read that, and he's put his contact details in the chat, then I will leave that in there. And yeah, I actually feel like I've learned quite a lot. I came into today's session thinking, oh no, I don't know how to answer questions on this. I'm going to look really daft, and I probably have still looked really daft, but that's fine. But actually, I've come away with a much better understanding of Scotcoin. So I'd like to say a big thank you to all of our presenters today who've certainly helped me as someone who's quite new to all of this language. But I think also help to those people who perhaps know a little bit more, who are able to ask some questions in the Q&A. So thank you to everyone that asked questions today. You helped me out enormously, because I wouldn't have known all of those questions to ask. And I'd just like to say a big thank you to David, to Temple, and to Jonathan. So I'm sure this is a topic we will come back on. I think particularly given it's got that ecosystem link, it takes time to build ecosystems. We know that very much in our sector. So we know we'll come back to this, I'm fairly sure. And I'd just like to say a big thank you to everyone for joining us today. So thank you, David, Temple, and Jonathan.
And thank you,
Thank
Naomi,
you.
for ably chairing the thing. And just another reminder, get onto Scott Wallet, people, and get your Scott Wallet sorted up, and give us an email and ask us how we can donate to your various causes.
And we'll do our best.
Brilliant. Thanks,
Thanks, Naomi. Thanks
again, folks.
Cheers now. Bye.
Have a great day.